Hey everyone, John here! And before the release of Astro Bot, something I heard a lot is they should take the tech demo, Astro's Playroom, right? And make a full-blown game out of it. But I feel like little did people know, we've had a full-blown Astro game. The franchise has been around for over a decade. And so today, I want to shine a bit more light on the other full-blown Astro Bot rescue mission. So dig out your PlayStation VR 1, get a ton of wires, and let's sit down and talk about the Astro series and specifically Astro Bot Rescue Mission. But before we do, first, a word from our sponsor.
This video is sponsored by Factor 75. It's a new year, and you know what that means. Time for resolutions. I'm trying to eat better, especially after the holidays, and thankfully Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals are the easiest way to support my goals. Their fresh, never-frozen meals are chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Factor makes it easy to skip going for takeout, and if things ever get too hectic, you can change your order up every week, or pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. The best part for me, though, is the fact that Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I skip the grocery stores and prep work, and with 35 meals to choose from each week, including options like keto, calorie smart, that's me, vegan, and veggie, I'll never get tired of what's on offer. Better yet, I don't even need to clean up. I can just skip right to the good stuff. So why don't you join me? Use my link to get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone and use my code GVGJAN50 to support the channel and get some delicious meals. Hey, thanks for watching the ad. It means a lot. And thanks to Factor 75 for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's jump right back into things.
Astro's been around for 11 years now, debuting in PS4's Playroom. Look at him. Uh-oh, it's Sackboy. Don't get any ideas about tearing him to shreds, you little bots. Then he came back for Playroom VR, a compilation of VR games with Astro, and one of them, Robot Rescue, is the exact template that Astro Bot would lead with for the next few games. It's only one level, but it introduced practically everything. And eventually, Astro got a full-blown retail game with Astro Bot Rescue Mission in 2018. Fast forward to the PS5 and Astro headlines the console as a pack-in, and in 2024 wins Game of the Year with Astro Bot, the 4th Astro Bot platformer and 5th Astro game. Astro Bot winning Game of the Year sends an excellent message. In an industry with ballooning budgets, where you can spend 6 years making a game, have it sell great, and still get everyone laid off, a fun and colourful platformer made in a healthy amount of time took the crown. That's excellent. And now I'm going to slander it. I'm kidding, kind of. I had a fantastic time playing Astro Bot. Every level is incredibly well polished, and I ended up doing everything just because it never stopped being fun. Now, what I'm about to say is going to sound negative, but don't take it as a slant against the game. It's fun in spite of all these things. It's a really well-made game, putting fun at the forefront. However, I always hear it described as fresh, and I'm not really sure that's the right word. Astro is a very iterative game that takes known quantities you've almost certainly experienced elsewhere if you play platformers, and just does them well. You'll go, ah yes, that's Cloud Mario from Super Mario Galaxy 2. That's water-filled Kirby from Kirby and the Forgotten Land. That's Sunshine's rocket nozzle. That's just like swimming with a Koopa shell in Mario Galaxy. Those water domes are just like Odyssey. Ah, slowing down time. Exactly like Crash Bandicoot 4. I could go on for a couple more minutes, but I can feel this getting tedious already, so I'll stop now. Mechanical influence is practically everywhere, and is it a bad thing? No. But the more fresh moments in Astro Bot were levels like this one that introduced the shrinking ability. I don't think I've seen a player-controlled shrink in a platformer before, and it's super rad. I want more of this stuff. When you shrink down, all those little plants that you usually just run by become full-on platforming jungle gyms. It's rad as flip even. So, Astro Bot PS5 remains fun all the same, but there's one more massive influence it borrows from, and that's itself. What's become overwhelmingly clear is a lot of people have not played Astro Bot Rescue Mission, which I strongly believe is the definition of fresh. That game is a revelation to the platforming genre, and while VR hasn't seen that much AAA attention, in some other universe, this would have changed the course of how platformers are even developed. It simply allows things that wouldn't usually be possible. It's full of so many new ideas, new perspectives, new angles, and beyond being a breakthrough VR game, it's also full of everything that made Astro Bot PS5 Game of the Year 6 years later. Let's ease into exactly what these two games have in common. The core moveset is identical. You're still going around levels searching for lost bots. The story is the same, collecting parts of a broken ship so you can take on a big alien guy. Level themes are pretty similar, you might even call them the exact same. Enemies behave the same, with most of them being shared between the two. Set pieces like Big Boy here are replicated and serve the exact same purpose. A chunk of the bosses are shared between the two, and some are mechanically extremely similar. And the PS5 game only minorly expands the soundtrack. Most of the bangers here come directly from Rescue Mission. This isn't to take everything away from Astro Bot PS5. Clearly not everyone likes the idea of VR or wants to buy a peripheral, and so the PS5 game is almost like a VR-less adaptation, and that's great. There's a couple more ambitious levels that border on sandbox, and that would have been quite tricky in VR, and it's also a big PlayStation museum, which Rescue Mission doesn't really lean on at all, although you are battling on a giant PS1 here. But from level to level, there's just so much that is the same. So as someone who did play Rescue Mission first, with the PS5 game, not only was I picking up on all these borrowed mechanics from other platformers, but I was also getting immense deja vu from the other Astro game. And so I do kinda take issue with the game being called fresh and full of new ideas. It's good, and it executes what it has well, but this one, oh baby, I like this one. To draw a comparison with Mario sequels, it's not mechanically or thematically different like going from Galaxy to Odyssey, and the levels are so similar that it's not like going from Galaxy 1 to Galaxy 2. It's more like New Super Mario Bros. Wii to New Super Mario Bros. U, and I know that sounds bad, but hear me out. Two different platforms, two different games, but really familiar levels and core, right? But here we're also going from VR to non-VR, and I'm sure that's a good thing to those who just don't care to engage, and it's good that more people can experience the game. But when you fall in love with everything Rescue Mission has, it's hard not to see going standard as a huge step back. You don't have to care about VR, but can we all see how innovative Rescue Mission is? There was no other game quite like this. To this day, there still really isn't. We've had Max Mustard. That's pretty good, if not overly similar. Rescue Mission was innovating in what a VR platformer even was. It's a Mario 64 in a way, pioneering an entire subgenre on its first try. I mean, kind of, it did it before in Playroom VR, but a bigger one. But the VR field just hasn't been big enough to invite more to follow. Although heck, Mario Odyssey did kind of follow. Its Labo VR mode is nowhere near as fleshed out, but it's all about fixed camera angles and trusting your 3D depth perception, no matter how far away you are from the camera. That's Rescue Mission, baby. This has everything you fell in love with in Astro PS5, but bends the genre rather than confines to it. It's really hard to show 2D footage of a VR game and relay exactly what I mean, but in a flat-screen platformer, you really need to account for depth perception. The camera has to be perfect all the time, but here, not only can you move in 3D space and perceive exactly where you are, even when Astro is radically far away from the camera, but you can also physically turn to get these bizarre angles that just wouldn't work in 2D, but are mind-blowing in VR. If you've never played it, you probably think I'm crazy telling you that this is a good angle, but believe me, it works. And I love that Rescue Mission harkens back to the sensibilities of Lakitu in Mario 64 and makes the camera a character. It's you, a smiley little robot guy. You'll sometimes see yourself in a monitor or catch your shadow on the ground when you're running along. Rescue Mission is definitely a seated VR game, but it's always so cool to lean around a corner and find a little path tucked away, or one of Astro's lost crew members just hiding down a ditch. When Rescue Mission is at its best though, is when the level design invites you to be a part of it. Sometimes you'll need to headbutt parts of the terrain, or avoid projectiles both as Astro and as yourself. You can get goo shot on your screen and physically have to shake it off, which is from 3D Land, but there's a really different execution when the camera is its own entity rather than just following the player. All those moments in Astro PS5 where you stop in your tracks and swirl the camera around to see if there's any secrets lurking anywhere are extremely heightened when you can physically swivel around and look anywhere. It opens the door to so many clever little secrets. The camera progression is completely fixed, and so if Astro pushes on, it won't pull back, and that is for sure a drawback. This led to a few annoying moments like here, where I could just barely hit these targets after a ton of trying, just because I pushed a little bit too far forward. That might lead to you restarting levels to find bots that you just can't reach anymore, or having to go incredibly far from the camera. It's weird, cause Playroom VR panned the camera back when you backtracked, so I don't know, man. They did it before. But hey, go back. Look at the ninja stars. In Rescue Mission, Astro doesn't get power-ups, but your controller does. You get a water sprayer, a ninja star launcher, a Gatling gun, and a grapple hook, which all found their way into the PS5 game in brief moments, and the grapple hook is also from Playroom VR. Levels that lean on these really feel like a co-op game with yourself, and they're all so well executed. The challenge levels in particular are pretty demanding, and I ended up holding the controller in ungodly ways. Is this what you intended, Team Asobi? Unfortunately, there's not much I can show you from Rescue Mission that you won't recognize from the PS5 game. I could be like, oh man, the part where you get the water upgrade and you spray it on the lava and you cool a path across it, but you've seen that. Oh, platforming through a tornado! Yeah, you've seen that too. Or the controller getting a torch so you can reveal hidden platforms in the graveyard, there's even ghosts. Yeah, you've seen that as well. Even with most of it being replicated, I still think you'll get a stronger experience here purely because of everything that VR brings. The surprise of levels is taken away a fair amount because you've seen it all before, but the amount of clever and brand new styles of platforming are so plentiful. And Rescue Mission does still have a few of its own ideas left, like Astro being swallowed by a giant sea beast, and the level being about escaping its insides, and there's these dynamic waves that show up which are really cool, both for reaching secrets and for having to avoid enemies at the same time. This might just be a Donkey Kong minecart section, but you know what? It's cool too. Rescue Mission itself for sure takes ideas from other platformers as well. It's always rad seeing the world boss show up in the background, and Astro PS5 does this as well. And while most of them reappear in Astro PS5, the big Sharky Boy is one of two that doesn't, and I'm not really sure why. He's even got a tropical version of the boss theme. I mean, listen to this. While the bosses are reused in Astro PS5, it's still neat how the game adapts them. These guys feel more expensive on the PS5, with more waves and bombastic set pieces, but at least with the giant monkey, the building blocks are the same, just with the hookshot power-up rather than the rocket dog. The octopus uses the spring punch power-up on a tropical beach on the PS5, but on PS4, it's about cooling it down in lava using the water cannon. The bird is the most different of all. On PS5, it's a Shadow of the Colossus-style fight in the sky, while PS4 has you trying to get them to peck a weak point on the ground while trying to avoid everything being thrown at you. They actually get pretty different, despite the boss itself being the same. The final boss is the reverse of PS5, where it uses your own power-ups against you, which you then have to counter and then steal for yourself and break them down. Should I be showing this? I probably shouldn't show it, right? A blur will be fine editing, John. The hub world is a lot smaller in Rescue Mission. It's not much of a world, it's more of a hub room. You can still get hundreds of little guys following you around, and it's super neat from this perspective. It's like peering into a diorama with a bunch of little fellas just skipping and prancing around the place. The prize machine is still here as well, but instead of PlayStation prizes or costumes, you get models and set pieces from the game, which then populate whatever theme you've set your hub to. This definitely isn't its own level, it's just kind of a place to spend your coins. It's alright. What I think is pretty clear is in the 9 years since Playroom VR, Astro hasn't really changed. Robot Rescue set the foundation, and then Rescue Mission made an entire game out of it, and then Astro Bot was just kind of more of the same, without VR. I was really hoping that Astro would have something for PSVR 2, but heck, even Rescue Mission doesn't work with PSVR 2. You've got to plug in the original PSVR into the PS5, use the PS4 to PS5 adapter for the PS4 camera, because otherwise there's nowhere else this can plug into, and then you get the processing box, which has a million cables coming out of it. Like, what the flip are we looking at here? It sucks that Rescue Mission is stuck to legacy hardware. Very few people are going to get a PSVR 1, and if they do, they've got to go through all these hoops to set it up as well. But once you've played for a few minutes, going back to PSVR 1 is surprisingly pretty easy. The quality downgrade from modern VR isn't that bad, but man, is VR better without all these wires, especially when you look over it. Why are there so many? You've still got such an immersive game here. I'd wave back every time Astro waved at me, and then panic because I don't see my hand because VR 1 doesn't have hand tracking, and I'm like, do I have hands? But if Astro ever returns to VR, I really hope he's got some new tricks. We've already had more of the same, and so whatever is next for this little guy, whether it's VR or standard flat screen, I want something weird. Rescue Mission shows he doesn't need to rely on PlayStation history to be interesting. The core is so good. But really, we've yet to have a ground-up sequel, despite the franchise being around for a decade. Something truly new and fresh. The PS5 game has small previews of that, but it never truly goes all the way in being completely unique from its predecessor. It's really cool more people are playing Astro, but I want something different, something more. By the way, what won Game of the Year in 2018? God of War, huh? I don't know. I don't recall Kratos getting stuck to my face. You know, making this video, I had to play a lot of Astro Bot. I played Playroom, Playroom VR, Rescue Mission, Playroom, as in Astro's Playroom, not the other Playroom, and then Astro Bot. It's a confusingly titled series when you say all the names like that. And I had such a good time playing all of them. I know I've been pretty harsh on Astro Bot PS5 throughout this video, and I hope those criticisms don't come off as me hating the game, because I genuinely have such a good time whenever I play it. Capturing these clips just brought a lot of joy to me. I just think that a lot of what it does is owed to Rescue Mission and other platformers. That doesn't take away from how fun it is, but in terms of new ideas that it brings, it's not as plentiful as it may seem, but is a good game all the same. Sometimes you don't need to be innovating to be good, and that's absolutely fine. But Rescue Mission, though, that is a game that goes above and beyond to push the boundaries of the platforming genre, and so I hope more people give it some attention if they can. I got a PSVR for around £30 last year, so these things are like really cheap now. And even though it's a bit of a hassle to set up with the big processing box and having to get an adapter for the camera if you're playing on a PS5, I still think it's worth it. You know, I'd argue that the PSVR 1 library is a lot stronger than PSVR 2. I mean, you've got like Zone of the Enders and Wipeout, and you've got other games as well that are slipping my mind, like The Last Guardian VR, Everybody's Golf VR, Resident Evil 7 VR, Dreams VR, and more. See, editing, John knows. He always knows. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I will catch you next time. Bye.